By the 5th week of her painting class, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The Tuesday sessions had gone from being a tentative experiment to the highlight of her week. She began to crave the smell of paint, the sound of brushes swishing in jars of water, the way Claire's voice encouraged everyone to trust the process instead of chasing perfection. Her latest piece, a seascape with turbulent waves and a glowing sunset, sat drying on the spare room desk. She had caught herself going in there just to look at it, as if it were a living thing breathing in the corner. And yet, she knew the class would end soon. 6 weeks was nearly up. Claire's suggestion. One evening, as Sarah was rinsing her brushes, Claire approached her. "You've got a good eye for color," the instructor said. "Have you ever thought about doing more with your art?" Sarah laughed softly. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that." "Maybe not today," Claire said, "but we have an open studio on Thursday nights. No formal lessons, just a space where artists work together. You might enjoy it." The suggestion lingered in Sarah's mind on the drive home. An open studio sounded exciting but intimidating. Without the structure of a class, she would be stepping into a room full of people who called themselves artists. A chance encounter. The next day during lunch, Sarah wandered into Harbor Art Supply again. This time she was looking for a set of acrylic paints to use at home. As she browsed, a man in his late 50s with paint-smeared jeans struck up a conversation. "Working on something big?" he asked with a friendly grin. "Not yet," she admitted. "I'm just getting back into it after a long time." "Ah, I know that feeling," he said. "I stopped painting for 20 years while I ran my business. Got back into it at 48. Best decision I ever made." Something about his casual confidence made her feel braver. Before she left, he scribbled a name on the back of her receipt. "There's a small cafe downtown that hangs local artists' work. They're always looking for new pieces. You should check it out." Sarah tucked the note into her bag. She told herself it was just information, nothing she had to act on. But her heart beat faster all the same. The spare room. That weekend, Sarah transformed the guest bedroom into a makeshift art studio. She moved the desk to face the window, covered it with an old sheet, and stacked her sketchbooks and canvases along the wall. The room smelled faintly of turpentine and new beginnings. Every evening after dinner, she slipped away to paint. Sometimes she worked for 10 minutes, sometimes for hours without noticing the time. She painted flowers from the backyard, the swirl of cream in her morning coffee, the reflection of lamplight on rainy streets. Painting at home felt different from class, less about following prompts and more about listening to herself. The brush became an extension of her thoughts. Testing the waters. A week later, she found herself standing outside the small cafe the man at the art store had mentioned. Bean and brush was cozy, with soft jazz playing and walls lined with colorful canvases. The owner, a woman in her 30s with bright green glasses, greeted her warmly. "Can I help you?" Sarah hesitated. "I heard you sometimes display local artists' work." The woman's face lit up. "Absolutely. Bring in a piece and we'll see if it fits our rotation. We don't sell on commission, but you can display your name and contact info." It was more casual than Sarah expected. No gatekeepers, no intimidating panel of judges, just a simple offer. Still, it felt monumental. The decision. That night, Sarah stared at her seascape, the one with the glowing sunset. Part of her wanted to keep it hidden, safe in the spare room where no one could criticize it. But another part, the part that had been growing louder since she found that dusty box of sketchbooks, wanted to let it be seen. The next morning, she wrapped the painting in craft paper and carried it to the cafe. When she left, it was hanging on the wall near the front window. She stood outside for a long moment, looking in through the glass. Customers sipped coffee beneath her work, oblivious to the woman standing outside, heart pounding. She walked back to her car with a strange mix of terror and exhilaration swirling in her chest. It was the smallest public step she could take, and yet, it felt like she had crossed an invisible line. For the first few days after hanging her painting in the cafe, Sarah felt like she was walking with a secret glow. Each morning on the way to work, she took a small detour past Bean and Brush just to glance through the window and see it there, sunlight pooling across the canvas like a blessing. But the glow didn't last. Mark's reaction. It was Friday evening when Mark noticed the extra art supplies in the spare room. He stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching Sarah rinse a paintbrush in the sink. You've been spending a lot of time in here lately, he said, his tone neutral but edged. Sarah smiled faintly. I've been painting. I even put one of my pieces up at a cafe downtown. Mark blinked, as if processing the information. Oh. Well, that's nice, I guess. Did they pay you for it? No, it's just for display. But So it's not really a job then? The words landed heavier than he probably meant them to. Sarah felt the fragile bubble of pride around her deflate. It's not about money, Mark. It's about doing something I love. He sighed. I just don't want you to get carried away with this and forget about the important stuff. Bills, Ethan's school, the house. You know how much we have on our plates. Sarah didn't reply right away. She wanted to tell him that for years, she had been the one keeping all those plates spinning. But she could feel her throat tighten, and she didn't trust her voice. Ethan's quiet disapproval. The following week, Ethan wandered into the kitchen as Sarah was gathering her brushes for Tuesday night class. You're going again? He asked, pulling a soda from the fridge. Yes. Why? He shrugged. Nothing. Just, you used to help me with homework after dinner. Sarah set her brushes down. Ethan, I'm still here for you. We can work on anything you need when I get back. He popped the soda tab and took a sip. It's fine. I'll figure it out. The words were casual, but Sarah felt a pang. She wondered if he saw her painting as taking something away from him, rather than adding something to her life. The voice in her head. By the third week of her painting hanging at the cafe, Sarah had heard nothing. No calls, no messages, no one telling her they liked it. She began to imagine customers glancing at it and thinking, who put this amateur thing up here? The voice in her head whispered that Mark was right, that this was a frivolous distraction, that she was wasting her time. Even in class, the joy she'd felt began to dull. She caught herself comparing her work to the younger students, their bolder colors, their confident strokes, and finding hers lacking. A conversation with Claire. One evening after class, as Sarah lingered to clean her brushes, Claire approached her. You're quieter than usual, the instructor observed. Sarah hesitated, then confessed, I thought hanging my painting in that cafe would feel like an achievement. But now I'm second-guessing everything. My family doesn't seem to get it. I'm not even sure I get it anymore. Claire nodded thoughtfully. You're stepping out of the life everyone's used to. That can make people uncomfortable, even you. But remember, you're not painting for their approval. You're painting because it's who you are. Sarah swallowed hard. What if I'm just not good enough? Claire smiled gently. Then you'll keep going until you are. That's the only way any of us ever get there. The quiet resolve. That night, Sarah sat alone in the spare room, her paint spread out before her. She thought about Mark's skepticism, Ethan's distance, the silence from the cafe. It would have been easy to stop, to put away the brushes, to fold herself neatly back into the role everyone expected. But she remembered the way she felt the first time she picked up a pencil again, the way the colors seemed to open a door inside her. That feeling, she realized, mattered more than anyone's approval. She picked up her brush and began a new canvas. 2 weeks after her conversation with Claire, Sarah woke up with the feeling that something inside her had tipped. It wasn't sudden, it was the slow accumulation of every sketch, every Tuesday night class, every quiet moment in the spare room. She was tired of hiding parts of herself. The morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window as she sipped her coffee. Mark was already flipping through his real estate listings, Ethan scrolling his phone. Ordinary morning, ordinary life. Yet Sarah felt an undercurrent of urgency, as if the clock were ticking on something important. She knew what it was. The insurance job. The breaking point. The restlessness had been building for years, but it finally crystallized one Monday afternoon. Greg, her supervisor, handed her yet another stack of claim files, this one marked urgent in red. I'll need these done by Thursday, he said without looking at her. Sarah looked down at the pile. Same forms, same procedures, same grind she had done for 2 decades. She thought about the hours it would take, the way her shoulders would ache by the end of the day, the way nothing about it would matter in the long run, not to her, not to anyone. For the first time, she didn't feel just weary, she felt trapped. That evening, she sat in her car in the driveway for almost 20 minutes before going inside. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as if she were bracing for a crash. When she finally walked through the door, Mark was on a call with a client, and Ethan was in his room. She climbed the stairs to the spare room, sat at her desk, and whispered into the quiet, "I can't do this anymore." The conversation. The next night, she waited until after dinner to speak to Mark. "I've been thinking about leaving my job," she began carefully. Mark looked up from his laptop, frowning. "Leaving? As in quitting?" "Sarah, that's not a decision you make on a whim." "It's not on a whim," she said evenly. "I've been feeling empty there for a long time. I want to try focusing on my art, maybe part-time work somewhere else to cover the bills." He set his laptop aside. "Art doesn't pay the mortgage, Sarah. We've got responsibilities. What about Ethan's college fund? The insurance?" "I'm not saying I won't work," she replied. "I'm saying I need to make room for something that matters to me. I can't keep doing this." He cut in, voice sharper than she expected. "You're talking about walking away from stability. People would kill for your job." Sarah held his gaze. "And I'm dying a little every day I keep it." The silence that followed was heavy. The leap. By Friday, Sarah had typed up her resignation letter. She kept it simple, professional. Her hands didn't shake when she signed it. Greg was surprised but not devastated. He'd seen people burn out before. "You sure about this?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "I'm sure." Walking out of the office that afternoon felt surreal. The air outside was cool and bright, the city sound sharper than she remembered. She half expected the sky to crack open or some invisible net to pull her back. But nothing happened. She was free. The weight and the wings. That weekend, the tension in the house was palpable. Mark didn't bring it up again, but his quiet disapproval lingered like a shadow. Ethan avoided the topic altogether. Sarah felt the weight of their doubt, but also a strange lightness in her chest. She woke up without the dread of Monday morning hanging over her. Instead, she threw herself into painting. She worked in long, joyous stretches, experimenting with color and texture, losing herself until her neck ached and her fingers were smudged with paint. For the first time in decades, her days were her own. The invitation. One Wednesday afternoon, while Sarah was cleaning her brushes, her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the cafe owner at Bean and Brush. "Hi Sarah. We've had a lot of positive comments on your seascape. Would you be interested in participating in our local artists showcase next month? It's a small event, but it's a great way to connect with the community and maybe even sell a piece or two." Sarah stared at the screen. Her heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with something bright and wild. She hit reply, and typed one word, "Yes."